no pain, no gain. So you have to, of course, you have to endure a little bit of pain. The biggest misconception I've heard, and I hear maybe every day, is no pain, no gain. So you have to, of course, you have to endure a little bit of pain to grow stronger, but it's not the only way. You can also smartly train, in which you have a little bit of less pain, but also a lot of gain. So I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions in sports, is that you always have to go until the end, until you're sweating, the whole clothes are full of sweat. But there's a lot of steps in between, which are also very important to do. It's, first of all, thinking what is your goal, and then working backwards from that goal. So if you, for example, if you want to become a Tour de France rider, cyclist, your training plan will be very different than from just someone who wants to be healthy. So that's the first step, just to see what's my goal, and then work backwards from it. For example, if you have a goal of just becoming healthy, it's very easy, 1 or 2 times a week. Some weightlifting, 1 to 3 times a week endurance training, and then you've got it. So start with the goal in mind, that's the first thing. Good question. So why is Zone 2 so hyped right now? Well, Zone 2 is it's an endurance zone, which is one of the lowest intensity zones. It helps with so many things. The list is endless, but the most important thing, it's low impact, most of all, so the body is not tested until the extreme, which makes it very easy to recover from, which makes it also possible to do a lot of. It will help with your fat oxidation, so your fatty metabolism will increase due to Zone 2. There will be more blood flow to the muscles, your muscles will grow more mitochondria. The mitochondria are the energy fabrics, what's a fabric in fabriek in het Engels? Energy plants of your cells. So you increase those with Zone 2. And I think the biggest misconception is that a lot of people don't really feel that they're training in Zone 2. It doesn't feel like they're actively sporting, but they are. A lot of things are happening in the body, a lot of very good benefits are happening. So this is also coupled with the no pain, no gain thing I said in the beginning. You don't always have to go to the extreme. Zone 2 is not extreme, but has a lot of benefits. Another thing, or some problem that can occur in Zone 2 training, is that people just go way overboard and go into Zone 3 already. So Zone 2 is a stage of endurance in which you can still talk to people. You can still have a conversation. When you're moving up to Zone 3 or even Zone 4, you're out of breath, there's no conversation possible anymore. So a quick, easy test is, if you can still sing, if you can still hum, if you can still talk to people, then you're in Zone 2. Yeah, exactly. So in Zone 3, mostly after 45 minutes to 60 minutes, you're done. In HIIT training, you do 4 sets, for example, of 4 minutes on, 4 minutes off, which is a Norwegian method. But in Zone 2, you have to do a way longer time to get the benefits. 15 minutes of Zone 2 will give you a little bit of small benefits, but not the thing that you really want. So you have to push it up to 1 hour, 1 hour and a half, 2 hours if possible. So VO₂max is short for the volume of the oxygen that you can maximally introduce into your body and use. So I have to go back to the metabolization first. When in our body we produce energy, we first have to burn fats or we have to burn sugar. And that's possible with oxygen. So the more oxygen you can take in, the more fats and sugar you can burn, which give you more energy, which can translate into higher speeds or for a longer time that you can do an activity. When you have a high VO₂max, you have more capacity for long distance at a high intensity. So we see with our athletes, when they have a high VO₂max versus an athlete with a low VO₂max, their endurance, their performance increases. But it's also important just for you and me, Julia. It's important because it's a marker of health and longevity. So we see that the people with the highest VO₂max also have the highest chance of living long and living healthily long. The most important thing with sporters that are beginning their sport journey is to build the base. Because the base will make sure that you can do a lot of high intensity activity. If you have no base, you can do the high intensity, but there's 100% chance that you will have an injury. So first thing that we always do with our starting sport people in our office, for example, is we do 6 months to 12 months just base training. Get the fat oxidation at a good pace, get the strength of the muscles, the strength of the tendons at a good level, and then we can start building on that. And then we can start pushing into zone 3, zone 4, zone 5, doing the HIIT training. But the basis is always the zone 2, which will give you like a good base to work on. It's the fundament. It's the fundament of the house that you build. There's a difference in training method if you only want strength or if you really want the mass. I think everyone wants a little bit of both. Of course, you want to feel good, you want to look good. So that's the goal then is more so on the size part. Everyone knows the bodybuilders, they also want the size. On the other hand, you can just train for strength, which will also give you a lot of benefits, just metabolically in the body, but also later in life. Because the most important thing of those two is actually the strength for later life. For example, when you're walking down the stairs, you trip, you fall. If you have a lot of muscle strength later in life, maybe you can still hold on to a railing, or you can put your foot firmly on the next step, which will prevent you from falling and breaking something. That's all muscle strength. It doesn't matter if you have big muscles or short or small muscles, it's the strength that matters. If you want to look good, the muscle mass, of course, is a primary factor. But if you want to train for either of those, they have a little bit of a different training mechanism. If you want a lot of strength, you lower the repetitions. You do 3 to 5 to 6 repetitions of a movement instead of doing higher repetitions if you want more muscle mass. If you want more muscle mass, you go for 8 to 12 to maybe even 20 repetitions with a lower weight. The strength is mostly built due to nerve adaptations, so neural adaptations, more nerve endings going into more muscle endings, which will trigger more contraction of the same muscle. Whereas if you do volume building, muscle building, it's actually the muscle that gets bigger. There's a lot of things that you can do for your recovery, like 20, 30 different kinds of things. You can do saunas, you can do ice baths, you can do cryotherapy. They are useful in some cases, but I think too many people give too much weight on those certain kinds of actions and give too little weight on the basics, which is sleep, which is nurture, which is food, which is resting. They are interesting for the high-performing athletes who already do the basic stuff very well. Those are the last percentages, but for just the global population, it's way more important to just focus on the basics because 90–95% of your recovery will be fully done with just a focus on sleep, on food, and on resting. There's one thing that I would suggest to anyone who would want to recover better, and it's to focus on sleep. And there's a very easy trick to remember it. It's just 16, 10, 3, 2, 1. 16 means 16 hours before you go to sleep in the morning, you go outside. This is important. When it's outside, you have the sun. Even though it's cloudy, there's a lot of light hitting your eyes. The light that hits your eyes goes into your retina, then gives a connection to the inside of the brain, which is, there's a part there that's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, SCN in short. And that little part of your brain, little organ, is actually the master clock of the whole body. It will give signals to the whole body to tell the muscles, the kidneys, the liver, everything, the heart, what time it is. And this is very important. So it gives signals not only to the organs in your body, but it also gives signals to the rest of the brain to say, all right, now it's morning, we have to be alert, we have to be active. In 16 hours, 12 to 16 hours, it will get dark, it will be time to sleep. If we don't do this, our body doesn't know what time it is. And so what can happen if people don't see any sunlight, if we put them in a dark room, their body starts adapting to something else, and then the circadian rhythm is fully gone. So people that are sleeping badly, or if they are having problems to fall asleep, first thing that we want to do is start in the morning to see sunlight. Go outside 15 to 20 minutes. This is mostly okay. Don't try to just sit in front of a window. It takes way more time that way. Just go outside 15, 20 minutes, maybe walk around a little bit. The next thing of the 16-10-3-2-1 rule is the 10. Try to not take any caffeine 10 hours before bedtime. This is because the half-life of caffeine is around 5 hours for the most people. This means after 5 hours, the half of the caffeine intake that you have taken in is metabolized, is gone. So that means if at 12 o'clock you drink a coffee with your meal, at 5 o'clock there's still half of the caffeine in your body. At 10 o'clock there's still a half of half, so it's a quarter of that same coffee is still in your body. For some people it's very difficult to fall asleep even with that little piece of caffeine still floating around. Also for people that do fall asleep, there's still that part of caffeine working on the brain, which gives sleep fragmentation and which inhibits the deep sleep. So people get less deep sleep, maybe due to a caffeine intake 12 hours prior, around 12 o'clock. So that's a very big thing to keep in mind. And if we go down the rule, 3-2-1, we have the 3. Try to stay away from food 3 hours before sleeping. So your last meal hopefully is 3 hours before bedtime. That way it's digested when you go to sleep. Otherwise your body is still digesting and is not resting the mind and the body actually. So digestion is a very active thing in your body. 2 hours before, stop working. When you work, your brain is very active. A lot of things are going around and the brain has to have a few hours to really slow down. When we're too active in the evening, the sleep will get hurt. So 2 hours before, close the laptop, do something else for fun. 1 hour before sleep, and better even more hours before sleep, is just to put away every blue light device, especially your phone, especially high stimulus things on your phone will keep your brain alert, but also give the light signal to your brain to say it's day. So there's a mismatch there. So that's the 16-10-3-2-1 rule. So recovery in the last couple of years, especially in top sports, has gained a lot of hype influence because we know when you do a training, you have to recover. When you recover faster, better, you get a gain versus another athlete, of course. So before it was only just training. Recovery was something that happened on its own. Right now it's a big part of a group, of a team. There's a lot of things that you can do to recover. We have talked about a few of those things, which are, of course, sleep is the mother of all recovery techniques. It's food intake, it's enough calories, it's enough proteins, it's enough carbohydrates also. And then there's a few things that you can do after your training to increase the blood flow, for example, to remove all the toxins from the body, from the muscles, to recover faster. For example, you can do just a cool down. You can still do a little bit of cycling, for example. 15 minutes of cycling after your very heavy workout will help the blood flow, will help with draining all the lactic acid, for example, or the acid. You can do some stretching also. Stretching will also increase a little bit the recovery time. You have massages, which are also good for getting in a restful state, in a very recovery state. Ice baths have been hyped the last couple of years. There's a lot of things to say about ice baths. They are good because they block the inflammation part after a training. You recover faster with an ice bath after training. The only problem is you also inhibit the growth response. So when you have you do training, muscles break down. This will send a signal to the body so it can heal, but that signal is interrupted by an ice bath actually. You want to do an ice bath if you have a few trainings after each other, if you want to perform, for example, in a Tour de France, when you have to perform in the next stage, it's a good idea to do an ice bath, because then you're feeling fresh the next day, you can win again if you're Tadej Pogacar. But it's not such a good idea for just the normal day-to-day when you want to grow and you want to increase your performance, your health. If you do a training, you do an ice bath right after it, it will inhibit the growth response. So we try to stay away from it, especially 12 hours after a training cycle. Before a training, it's not too bad because then the muscle hasn't been broken down already. So if you want to do ice baths, do it before training instead of afterwards. So the protein hype is very real, I think. I think a lot of people will reap some benefits from an increase in protein, especially when they are doing any training. There was a lot of things on the news recently that around 50 grams of protein would be enough for any kind of person, even athletes, even people that are doing a lot of activity. This is just untrue. We also know that this will lead to more injuries, lead to also a drop in performance. So I think it's a very harmful advice from those news outlets. We know that if we increase the protein intake, we increase muscle mass, we increase muscle strength, we increase the recovery. It's quicker. So it's a bit of a difference between endurance athletes when people just do running, cycling, triathlons, for example. The golden rule there is 1.5 grams protein per kilogram of body weight, up to 2 grams per kilogram of body weight. When you're a weightlifter or when you do weightlifting training, you can increase it to 2 to even 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight, because you need way more to rebuild the tissue that you have broken down while training. When you're injured, you have to recover even more. You need more building blocks, which are those proteins. And those building blocks, you have to take in way more, which is 2 to 2.5 grams per kilogram of body weight. So it's a lot. But we see in studies, we see also in our athletes in everyday life that they are getting the benefits from an increase in protein. So one of the most important principles is progressive overload. So we see a lot of people that are shooting too far up into the sky. So when they do 1 week, they train, and then the next week they do double, and then the next week they do double of the double. So it's way too intense. That leads to injury, of course. We also see the other side is people that just do the same thing every week. The same intensity, the same volume, the same running, the same cycling, the same speed that they use. This will lead to no performance gain after a while. So you have to push your body a little bit. That's called progressive overload. And a good golden rule there is 10% per week increase. For example, you run 30K a week, for example, 3 times a day, 10 kilometers. A good golden rule is to try next week not to do 40 or 50 or 60, but do just 33, 10% more. When you do weightlifting in the gym, for example, you do a bench press, you press 60 kilograms for 8 reps, few sets. Next week, don't do 100 kilos. It will not work, of course. You can also get injured. Try to do just 65, 66, 10% increase. That's actually this and supercompensation, which is another question, of course, but this is one of the most important things in sport. So the supercompensation is, I would like to show it to you, but I'll try to graph it out with my finger. First you have, it's an x-axis and a y-axis. When you go train, you get a dip in performance. For example, you go running or you go cycling. After an hour, you can't cycle or as hard as you did in the beginning. So it's a drop in performance. Then when you recover, you get back to baseline, but also what happens in your body is your body becomes stronger the next day because it grows, it rebuilds everything. So you get an increase in performance. And then when you wait long enough, when you just do nothing anymore, after a few days or weeks, it's back to baseline. So this is a supercompensation curve. And this curve is actually also one of the most important principles in sports. If you know this and if you can use this, you can just build on this curve. So you can build on the up of the supercompensation when you're healed, when you're rested, when your body has grown stronger from a previous training. Then we do another training, we get the same curve, then we do another training, and so you can go up and up and up. The reverse is also true. When you work out or when you train too hard and you don't recover as well, you do another training, your performance will dip even further. When you train again, another dip in performance. So that leads to a decompensation instead of a supercompensation. And the decompensation can lead to injury, can lead to burnout, sports burnout, but also in everyday life you can get burnout. Emotional problems, just everything that you don't want. So you want the up and up and up, of course, and that's the art of coaching. That's the art of knowing an athlete's body. That's the art of also knowing your own body, when to perform again, when you're rested enough, when you're recovered enough. But that's the Fingerspitzengefühl. That's the art of sport.